the most important thing about being a salesperson is a commitment to what you are. You're a salesperson. You need to commit to that. This is my career. This is what I'm going to do.
What have I learned? I've learned a lot of things from the program that we're going through with CompassPeak. I think one of the things that I learned most was to engage people. There's a difference between management and leadership. And one of the key differences, and you probably have noticed over the last, couple of months, I haven't spent a lot of time at my desk as much as you're probably used to seeing me there. Because, one of the key indicators of management versus leadership is management spend a lot of time looking at spreadsheets and doing a lot of analysis, and you don't tend to talk to a lot of people, so you get a lot of desk time. Leadership is when you're talking to people, interacting with them, like all of you, talking about what's important to you, what some of the challenges you're facing, and how I can relate some of my experiences to help you out. And that's probably the number one thing that's made the biggest impact on me as part of this CompassPeak.
For me, CompassPeak is biggest thing is the commitment you got to do, as Vic mentioned. But more importantly, for me, as I went back home and went down to that well, and slowly came out of it, took me about a week, so I'll be open and honest with you about that, is a commitment not just to work, but to the personal side of you are, right? You walk into a room, you either can take over the room, or you can walk into a room and be like a little shy guy, hi, we're here to sell you something. That's the biggest thing for me that CompassPeak showed me, is just having a plan. But having a plan that you're using every day of your life, not just when you go to work.
But I ran through a few things. There's a lot of lessons coming out of CompassPeak. Taking yourself out of the room, not personalizing it. So when you're in a meeting or a call, it's less about you and more about your prospect, your customer. Everything down the line through to presentation skills, how to work a room, how to position certain things within a room to help during a presentation, where you stand, where your seat might be, how to give a room up to someone else that might be taking over or starting to engage in a presentation or in a meeting with you. So some neat little tactical things that I've picked up throughout the process. Let me see, but perhaps the biggest one I think that came to mind was just about going beyond just treating it like, treating what we do here every single day like a paycheck, and more about creating a story, creating a legacy, building something that is bigger than the individual parts, and taking pride in your work. I think you get to that once you do initially take that leap and commit and say, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm here, and it's going to contribute to this bigger thing. I think that's what helps you get there.
I've really enjoyed what we've been doing with CompassPeak, and it's driven home something I've always believed in, and that's that you can't have a company of individuals, you have to have a team working together. Because unless everybody's working towards the same goal, you're self-defeating.
My thing relates more to experience with the customers, because that's what I do, is I work with and relate to our customers. And I spend more time banging my head against the wall, sometimes trying to put things into their hands that they don't need, as opposed to asking the questions about what is important to you and what do you need. And so on that subject, I'd like to just relate a quick success story where I had a customer, the Buffalo Public Schools, that was all about PowerSave, selling them PowerSave. I was on the phone with them when I was on a bus in Chicago talking about PowerSave. But it wasn't listening to the fact that it wasn't something that they really needed at the time and wasn't important to them. And it came to light through asking them what's important, that deep freeze was. And so now we've just received an order on
17,000.
I guess an example of that would be New Westminster Schools. Tried the superintendent, no luck. Technology director, no luck. And what did I do? I went to the board. I got a call within a day from the secretary treasurer. I actually did a webinar the same day the call came in. They're having their budget meeting last week, so I got to give them a call this week in regards to power saving, possibly deep freeze. So I guess just listening more and not just going in there and just pitching them. Try and get as much information, but ask more questions and find out what their real need is.
Good morning, everybody. So what I've learned most about myself actually through the whole process is that my whole life I've been an account manager or a sales manager or a CDI specialist or a consultant, but really I'm just a sales rep. And what that means is I want to sell you something. And I always say that when I call people at the beginning of my calls. So I'm slightly tenacious and I'm way more persistent than I've ever been. And what it takes to get through to the senior level people is that you have to call 40 or 50 times sometimes until the EA says, don't ever call me again. And that's something new for me because usually I try 3 or 4 times and then I step back. And now when I get through to a senior level person, I actually say, my name's Tamara Haiti and I'd like to sell you something. And then I go from there. And they almost laugh. Lots of them laugh when I say, hey, I want to sell you something. And they're like, really? Okay, what do you want to sell me? So it's really good. It's been really good for me. And I'm actually proud to say I'm a salesperson. For the first time ever in my life, I actually say to people, I'm a salesperson. So that's a big hill to climb.
All right, well, I'll start with what I got, or what I have been getting out of CompassPeak. Probably the biggest thing is asking the right questions and then shutting up and not answering it for them or helping them along and just asking the big question and then just being quiet. And it's amazing how long they'll go for if you just let them talk. Being able to ask the right question, but being able to ask it at the right time has probably helped me the most. And going high, the higher you go, it's harder to get their time, but it's amazing how people want to talk to you when they've been told that they should by someone higher than them.
There's a few things that I have learned working with CompassPeak. Richard can be a real prick, number one, but he's got good information, and I appreciate it. So there was a love fest earlier, so I had to diffuse that a little bit.
I feel humbled.
And I appreciate that too. So calling high, and I don't mean smoking a joint before work and starting to call people. I mean calling in to people that make decisions. And that has been, in my career, it's always easier to talk to somebody and hope you get to the right people instead of making the tough call and having something specific, having a reason to talk to them. And for me, it has been really getting to that point of saying, I'm not just going to call somebody, I'm going to call the guy or the girl. And it's helped, and it's worked. Just some examples of that. San Diego, County of San Diego recently, 12,000 seats within the organization. I call specifically into the Chief Administrative Officer's office and the deputy without calling anybody else. 2 days later, I get a phone call from a guy named Julian Shelby, and he is telling me that what I've called in the voicemail, the emails that I've followed up with, have been circulated at the executive level throughout, and they need to talk to us. And I'm like, excellent. So it just goes to prove, though, that if you have that executive sponsorship, things can happen quick. If I would have started with this guy, I would have gotten nowhere fast. And so it just helps because they're at 110% capacity of what their IT staff is doing. So it makes it a little bit more compelling when you have that executive sponsorship.
CompassPeak kind of came in and did it in a way that, first of all, we didn't know who they were. They didn't know who we were. So they showed me a lot of things that I could look at differently and make me think about myself and how I could change me. I also go off by what Tamara said as well as having respect for being a salesperson, and for me it's a very different kind of respect for it now, and CompassPeak has really set me up to step up to the plate to see what I can do. So it's really the question is on me now and what I can do. So it's very encouraging.
CompassPeak has helped me with a lot of things. I mean, I think coming in and starting this job, I had a lot of good things going for me, but I was still lacking a lot of the things as well. And Richard did a really good job. Basically, when you're on the phone, make that call count. So one thing, I mean, as Craig mentioned, say a big open question and then just leave it sit out there. Because I mean, I'm really bad for jumping in with not only interrupting them, but also what I'm being told is man-type behavior of rushing in and solving the problem. I mean, not necessarily the best way to always solve it. Try and figure out the true scope of that problem. Going to Scotsman a bit, trying to figure out, what happens to you guys if you don't solve this problem. because I think that was stuff I wasn't even touching on before. And when you know that information, I mean, it just really helps you close that deal as it progresses. And then if you do hit a wall, you kind of know already, okay, well, this is what I can kind of use to kind of overcome these objections.
I guess my one's kind of two main takeaways. A lot of people touched them already. The first one is to open with that big question. I just sit there, I did my role play with Richard, and I started with a huge question and tagged a tiny one on the back. Rather than just letting it just sit there, open the big question, just let the customer talk and just let them tell you what their pain is. Once they tell you what their pain is, you can then start to maybe look to resolve their issues and their problems, but don't try and ask small questions. As Richard mentioned, you get small answers. The second one is, because we work in the channel, a lot of what the CompassPeak training's been about, it's about taking the information they've taught us as salespeople in this room and telling that to some of our partners as well, so that they're more successful in the field as well. One of my examples would be, I got a regional sales manager, a guy by the name of Greg McDowell, who works for GHA in the Northwest. I told him exactly how to sell PowerSafe, the points of contact, the CFOs, the pushback that he'd get when he went to IT, etc., and how to sell it. He hasn't been talking to CFOs before. Now all he's doing is talking to CFOs or CEOs of companies. He spoke to Costco's CFO, he spoke to the Port of Seattle CFO, Packard CFO. We're getting webinars, we're getting traction, and we're getting the right people into the room because we're speaking to the right people at the front end. So my takeaway is not just for me as a salesperson myself, but to coach and help our partners become better salespeople so that they're stronger in the field for Faronics, not just with the new business we're bringing in, but for the fulfillment business that we're working with as well for the direct team.
This is no surprise, as tonality is probably the #1 thing that I've learned. When Richard first told me in the first session that we had about my tonality, I kind of was like, I know I'm all right on the phone, I got pretty good tone, and like whatever, right? And then a few days later, I left myself a voicemail, I listened to it, and I was like, that's right. I'm a lot more aware of how I sound on the phone. I know my voice is a bit deep, so I try on the phone. I try to make sure I'm just very, basically just my tonalities, just make sure I'm really aware of it, and I think that's really helped a lot of customers, as well as listening. I like everyone else. A lot of the time, I'll pitch them something or say something, and then they'll start responding, and then when they're finished the first sentence, I'll just jump in, and now I just sort of get through that awkward silence, and then they keep talking and talking and talking, so that helps a lot. And I think also just the confidence factor. Before, if I made a call and it didn't go very well afterwards, I'd just be really down. I'd be like, well, it's horrible, I'm not a good salesperson, but now it's just, it's part of the job, and that's what you got to go through to get better and to make more sales. And now when I go through a failure, it's more of a motivation to do better on the next call.